Medical report we're tracking down Ann Morrison. We have, of course, the contents of her TWILAND.INFO, and I'm going to start with that, covering some of the key issues that are going on, that are happening right now. Firstly, with radiation, we have the Waterford, Louisiana event 52336, spill of estimated 150 gallons of total tritium contaminated water. Waterford, Louisiana event 52337, crane overload condition occurred. Farley, Alabama event 52340, deficiency in valve component causes pneumonia leak. And RadCon for the 3rd of November, and 5 concerns. Wow, that's a lot. Imagine 5 different areas of the country or towns and cities where radiation levels are spiking for post-geriatric plants. The next area is the Zika virus. Positive women have higher rates of birth defects, stillborn, miscarriage, and ugly and scary ultrasound images. No worker compensation for Zika unless you catch that mosquito. Okay, and preparation. And we've got you back. So let's start off with, what do you want to start with? Radiation first, preparation, dealing with the all-seeing eye. Russia builds gigantic military radar in the Arctic. Which area would you like to cover first?
Yes. Well, I would like to start off with Zika, if that's all right with you.
Good, let's do that, because I see that at the top here, and I guess is this a major paper that you have here, right?
No, actually, this is not. We're not getting we've had Dr. Frieden, who is the head of the Centers for Disease Control,
which you talked about last week, yeah.
Yeah, we talked about him last week, and he was very forthcoming. But he's still being disingenuous. And the people that I'm trying to educate think that because this isn't like Ebola, where somebody comes in, gets sick, and dies within a week, that what they're saying is that you don't die from Zika. And I finally got a source, and she was on public broadcasting. And it was one of these panels that they have. And her name is Dr. Christy Curry, and she's OBGYN at the University of Miami Health System. So I think she's a credible resource.
Right.
And what she said was that women who are Zika positive have higher rates of birth defects, stillbirth, miscarriages, and ugly and scary ultrasound images. Well, I guess they're not counting the in utero babies who are dying as deaths from Zika. Because that's the only way, they agree that there was a man who died in Utah, and he was elderly, and he was a super spreader, and he spread it to his caretaker, but he died. And then there were a couple of other people who they say died, but again, they can't say that it wasn't something else, like they fell that bled out with the platelets. Remember the platelet count went?
Yeah, where all of a sudden the platelet count dropped because it literally can cause destruction of their thrombocytes in their bone marrow. So all of a sudden they get thrombocytopenia and bleed out.
Yes, and they agree that he died of Zika. And I think there was one other, I can't remember, I don't have it in front of me.
Well, it was a senior that died of Zika virus encephalopathy, multilocal encephalopathy, and apparently his relative was taking care of him. They think got infected with tears from this guy.
Oh, is that how they did it? Yeah, that's possible. Yeah. He was probably wiping away the tears and got it on his skin or something.
Right.
Okay, well, so when they just say, well, out of the tens of thousands of cases that we've had, we've only had 3 die, and they were already under medical care. Well, but that doesn't, why aren't they saying that they're being disingenuous because they aren't counting those who are dying of stillbirths or birth defects or miscarriages or even abortion.
Or delayed death due to neurological deterioration that might take months or years for it to have its full effect.
Exactly. I mean, women may bear, and what they bear would probably die within 6 months. I remember we got a call once from somebody who was so upset because he says, how are we going to find the medical care, the number of medical personnel we're going to need to take care of these babies? And I told him, I said, well, most of them are going to die within 6 months. And,
if they're positive.
they're not, well, yeah, exactly. They may die shortly after birth. If they make it to 6 months, it'll be, it'll be something. But in any case, they're not talking about either the babies with Zika who will die early or who will not be born at all because of birth defects, stillbirths, and miscarriages. Now, if you count those as people, and normally, there's right to life and there's right to choose.
Right.
And the right to lifers say, well, once that baby is conceived, it deserves life. And even though Zika goes in and destroys the DNA, I mean, that thing, that baby that was conceived will now, even if it were to live, will now be unable to bear children.
Yeah, well, it's probably not going to live very long. The problem is, if you have a child that's got an ongoing degenerative change that's affecting vision, because they can go blind and end up with progressive neurological degeneration even after they're born, the chances that these children are even going to survive childhood is very low.
Right. But we're not getting...
We could craft a program. I would say 3 things you want to do. You have to understand how epigenetics of a virus can alter the unfolding protein response to the endoplasmic reticulum, which we don't understand now. And we have to have intracellular antipathogenics, which we have, like our NutriSilver, Allison Med, and Edgar Casey diatomic iodine. We have to actually have things that can prevent the spread to other cells, like NutriDefense that blocks the receptor binding domain with polyphenol, the most powerful antioxidant, and receptor binding domain blocker in the world is our polyphenol and NutriDefense. And if we were to use these on these babies, not only on the mothers that are positive, whether in utero, but afterward, the chances of them having progression would be considerably less. The problem is, though, that many of them are going to basically be decorticate, so they're only going to have a reptilian brain. And we have to understand these are not really full humans. They're basically an animal version of humanity. And
they aren't even that.
Right.
Because they can't survive.
No. Yeah, and what we're dealing with here is, in a sense, a human extinction level event. And if it affects a large amount of the population, we could end up with human population. You quote a chart here that I think that you need to mention about the number of live births in Puerto Rico over the last few years. This kind of thing could literally cause a massive drop in fertility rates in the Western world. Well,
this came from the Census Bureau, and the Census Bureau keeps good records year to year, and they have birth and death statistics, and you can see the reference there. So this isn't something I made up.
Right.
But I did look at Puerto Rico in particular because they have had flavivirus in diseases within their population for probably the last 10 or 15 years. They've had chikungunya, they've had West Nile virus, and dengue, and now they've got Zika. So I just, those numbers that I plotted were just the numbers that were given by the Census Bureau, and they were for the children who were under 5 years old. So,
right.
The infants. And what happened was that I discovered that there's been a 7% drop in babies living to be greater than 5 years old.
Wow.
And in fact, the percentage drop is 7% over the years 2010 to 2014. 7% drop means that in 10 years, there won't be any.
Wow.
Yeah. So this is very telling, but we're not getting this information from public health or from Dr. Frieden at the Centers for Disease Control.
Is he aware of it, though? I mean, this is the point. Is he aware of it?
He's a medical professional. How could he not be aware of it?
Well, listen, I never underestimate the stupidity of health professionals. MD stands for 3 things: more dough, magnificent deity, and more dumb. And believe me, I've seen all three aspects of that shown in all of its great ugliness and glory.
Well, you won't find this on any. This has not been published anywhere except on what will be your live stream, and it'll be on my blog.
We'll put a video up afterwards, so it'll be there. And we get lots of hits, by the way. Within hours, in a day or two, we get hundreds of hits on YouTube, and the numbers are increasing dramatically. A month and a half ago, we had X number of subscribers. We have 4 times that in literally 6 weeks on YouTube alone. So, and our number of videos is now, in the hundreds. So we're getting a huge audience to start to say, I think I'm going to go to the Nutrimedical report and TWILAND.INFO and look at your videos of what we discussed with all your pictures and so on, because this information is not available by any other host and any other radio or TV shows anywhere on the internet, anywhere on earth. This is it. And the thing that's really disturbing is a lot of time we're raising questions, but you're quoting information that's public domain, but it's kind of like sequestered in a little cul-de-sac area like this data from Puerto Rico. This is scary stuff, because if you look at the idea that it can become endemic to the population of, let's say, the southern United States, we're talking about a population reduction, extinction level type event. This is not good, is it?
No, it's not good. But I had to have some ammunition for the deaths, because people don't seem to want to think of Zika as causing death. Well, it does cause death, and it is causing death, and we need to get some reporting out of public health on how many stillborns have there been, how many babies have been lost,
right?
How many have survived past 6 months, because all of those are deaths that result from Zika.
Yeah.
Okay, and we're not getting that information.
Right.
Okay, and you can read the whole interview there. It's from Public Broadcasting.
Yeah.
Now, as it turns out, there are 2 policemen in Miami, and Miami is disease central for Zika, and Miami Beach, and there's 2 of them that have developed Zika, and so they applied for workers' comp.
Right.
And you'll see a picture there, and because what they were told was, you have to catch the mosquito that bit you, and document where you were you on duty, were you
are you kidding
doing
me?
No, I am not kidding you, Dr. Deagle. You can read the story. Okay?
That's so bizarre. It's like that's like an obscene answer you tell somebody who's crazy. You must identify the mosquito and say you're on duty when you got sick?
Yes.
You've got to be kidding.
I am not kidding.
No.
Yes. And that was, that was off the businessinsurance.com page, business insurance,
This
because
is part of the reason why we shouldn't have worker comp separated from regular health care. This is part of the reason why the cost of business in America is so damned high. We can't compete with other countries. It's ridiculous.
And then, after you do that, even if you catch the mosquito and you have annotated where you were and what you were doing, and then the medical records would have to show that the virus was the thing that caused the permanent damage. In other words, you would have to have permanent damage in order to get workman's comp.
Yeah, well, and of course, I know the rating scale because I'm an expert at rating for work comp, and the work comp system is very corrupt. When I got harassed by the director of work comp, Kathy Mueller in Colorado, and I was sticking to it. I was BIMI trained as a certified international examiner. I got to tell you, these people are nuts, and they're corrupt as hell. You think Hillary's corrupt? These people are corrupt too, and they don't want you, even if using the rating tables and so on to come up with a rating. But the doctors, how many doctors think are going to identify peripheral sensory neuropathy, central nervous system changes, visual changes, including retinopathy or other changes? All kinds of subtle things that you have to do pretty advanced testing to even identify. And many of these things aren't going to happen right away. They're going to take decades or years for them to develop.
Well, the only way a policeman or anybody who's working outside can be safe is to wear mosquito netting from head to toe. And I have seen some of those head-to-toe outfits being sold.
Or take Allison Med, and the mosquitoes won't even bite you.
There you
because
go.
the thiol compounds in your sweat make anybody against that go, oh my God, the's no way I'm fighting you.
Yep. So I wanted to bring those two articles.
That's weird. Yeah, no, one of the things that I saw here that I found particularly scary was the preparation items. The all-seeing eye Russia builds gigantic military radar in Arctic, and of course the anti-stealth radar system, and the over-the-horizon radar being routine visitors of, and then of course the whole building of this nuclear arsenal the Russians have been retooling for the last 20+ years under Vladimir Putin. We see the reemergence of the so-called post-Soviet empire, and the Russians are totally paranoid that we're going to cause a nuclear war and attack them. Do you want to touch on some of these things? Because, here in North America, we don't get any of this news. It's all Hillary, Hillary, Hillary. She's fine. In fact, Pharrell that makes the song, about being happy, this guy, idiot Pharrell, he said, look, we're all corrupt anyway, so why don't you just vote for Hillary? And all you women out there, you vote for Hillary, she'll get in and everything will be great. Why doesn't he just shut the hell up? I mean, he's saying to us, you're all corrupt and you all lie, so vote for Hillary. How crazy is that?
That's pretty bad.
Yeah.
All right. Well, what's happening is that they took the fleet that was up in Russia. In fact, they have an island up there, and that's where they did their atomic bomb testing.
Right.
And it's just off the coast, inside the Arctic Circle, off the western coast of Russia, and in the Sea of Barents.
Right.
And it's not a really big island, but I have a picture of it there so you can see what's been going on there. Yeah. And you'll see where it has little radioactive sites. I know it's all written in Russian, but I think you can tell.
Right.
And so we have one side at the southern end of the island and two in the middle, and I think there's one at the north. No, I guess not. Okay, and two in the middle, and that's where they exploded the big atomic bombs. And I have a picture of that. That was the most powerful nuclear explosion in history, and that was in 1961. And we were doing airborne tests in the Bikini Islands in Polynesia at about that time. And but they were doing their testing up there off the coast of Russia in the Barents Sea.
Right.
Okay. Well, what they did was that they had their fleet stationed. They had a fleet that's in the Black Sea, but they also have a fleet that was off of northwest Russia, because that was to protect them from Europe. And they moved that fleet. Remember, we spent the last 3 weeks talking about where that fleet was going and how many ships were in it, and they moved it into the Mediterranean. So the fleet is no longer up there to protect them. So what they're going to do, and what they are doing, is moving in these big over-the-horizon, OTH, over-the-horizon radar, so they can tell if something's coming. And then they're moving in defensive systems. And so they're doing that. We're not doing anything. I mean, this is what the Russians are doing to protect them in Europe. And what's happening is that it's interfering. The only reason I even care about this, it was brought up on our ham radio net last Sunday.
Right.
It's interfering with ham radio. Now, the ham radio
operates... That's because the radar jamming technology is what you're saying, right?
No, just because the radars are so big and they're over the horizon.
Right. Well, I'm saying it jams normal communications through ham radio is what you're saying, right?
It's jamming regular communications at certain frequencies just because it's big. They're not
big and over the horizon. Wow.
Because it's over the horizon.
Exactly, yeah. So we're back in and welcome back. And let's go through some more of the data here, because you're a ham radio operator. This is so powerful horizon radar system in Russia. It can actually interfere with different frequencies for ham radio operation. What's the significance of the big radar system they put up?
Well, it's over the horizon. And that's what they're making now. And that means that they can see further. They can see jet planes coming, whereas before they used to just be able to see, for instance, Navy vessels and things like that. So
right.
they're filling their installation. So what they're doing, they're replacing the task force that they had up in by Norway, essentially, and they moved that because they moved that to the Mediterranean Sea.
Right.
And instead of moving more ships in there, because all the big ships are now in the Mediterranean Sea or the Black Sea.
Right.
They're putting in these big radars, and then they're also going to put in the defense systems. And we had talked about these defense systems before. For instance, the S-300 missile system.
Right.
And if you remember on that diagram, they have a long-range surveillance radar, and that's what we're talking about. And because they're on wheels or tracks, they can move them around, and we can't pinpoint them.
Right.
And that's probably what they're going to do. But in any case, the ARRL, which is the FCC sets the bands. For instance, we're in Region 2. Region 1 is Europe and Africa and Russia. And Region 3 is China and Australia and the Pacific Ocean.
Right.
And then they break it down even further. For instance, we here in the United States, in the Midwest, are either in Region 7 or 8, and you're probably in Region 6. So, it's all managed by the FCC. And the FCC sets the rules. They're the ones that set the bands. And they say there's 40 meters. For instance, I can operate on 6 meters to some extent, on 2 meters, and on 70 centimeters. And those are and also on 220. And those are the bands that an amateur at the lowest level can operate on. But then you go and you get your general license, and then you can operate on the HF, the high frequency bands. I can operate on very high frequency and ultra high frequency. Anyway, and so what they've discovered is that not only is this over the horizon radar interfering with amateur traffic, but you can bet that it's interfering with navigation traffic on other parts of the band, because band is not just for amateurs. I mean, we just have a little piece of it. And the width, we've been going here in the United States, because we have so many people who want to use the band spectrum. They keep making the width of the spectrum lower and lower. So you have to have special radios that will not broadcast outside of the width of your communication that you're allowed, which is getting smaller. But they're broadcasting way outside. So not only do they interfere with amateur, but they're interfering with other people, like emergency traffic. And they're supposed to be out apparently on 80 meters and 15 meters and on 10 meters. And they're supposed to coordinate that with their equivalent of the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission. But they're if you're talking to the Russians, they're not cooperating. Yeah, that's right. And so we've got a list here that was published by the International Amateur Radio Union, because it's not just the United States, it's not even it goes around the world, and we all try to cooperate.
Right.
And so you can see that even from the Black Sea, Sevastopol, that's the head of the Navy fleet in the Black Sea, and it goes out through the Bosphorus.
So the Russians are basically acting like bullies now, even on the in the bandwidth.
Well, and that's very important for our communication.
Yeah, not a good sign. Well, and this is the situation in Russia, and we talked about this with Joel Skousen. I don't trust the Russians. If you actually look at the issues of the Table of Nations with Ezekiel, and includes Muslim nations, and it includes Russia and many of Russian allies. So I think the reemergence of the Soviet Union is happening before our eyes. And in general, the public are ignoring it, aren't they?
Well, it's hard to say what our government is doing. I mean, I can't make sense of what they're doing. They say, when I watch international news, and they say we're supplying ISIS and we're supplying the rebels.
Well, we are, but on the other hand, this is multiple space chess. The Kissinger Foundation is saying we shouldn't have this kind of argument with Russia. To be honest with you, although the situation in the Crimea and in these other areas, yes, there's two sides to it, and we're doing pressure on our side, but we're seeing now that the Russians are coming out of their economic doldrums, and only partially, by the way, because with the oil economy crashing, a lot of the people, the most expensive city to live on earth is Moscow. The Russians are starving. That's why you see all these internet bride things from Russia. It's like their economy is in the toilet. And Russia is putting a lot of their military and information and everything into very advanced weapon systems that are retooling to actually plan for a world war. They don't have a conventional military, so everything to them is going to go nuclear and missile and advanced scalar weapons right away. I mean, that's their whole modus, isn't it? Well, yes. And meanwhile, what have we done? We've let our military deteriorate. Under Obama, I mean, this guy is a ridiculous fool, and he's always got that smirky look on his face, like you got to believe me when he's saying that Trump is supported by the Klan. And he's smirking, don't vote Trump because he's a Klansman. I'm thinking, listen, you lying piece of garbage. Even internationally, nobody respects him. Why would Americans respect this fool, Obama, after 7.5 years of destroying the country? Well, I don't know. Not only did he destroy the military, but he's also let the infrastructure fall apart. And it's going to take a lot to get the infrastructure back to the point where we can even transfer grains, commodities, to the oceans, where they can be barged over to the Far East. I mean, it's remember in the spring you announced that the number 10 highway heading out through California, in the desert that wasn't properly being taken care of, and they didn't have the money to fix it, so we had lost something like a percentage of our entire shipping worldwide, and our economy had been temporarily hit really hard just by the fact that this infrastructure was not being repaired. Yeah, I think the number was 2%. Yeah, 2%. That's pretty significant when you're dealing with the largest economy on Earth. Well, and the Chinese are building super tankers that won't even go into our ports anymore. I mean, they can't go into our ports. They cannot be. The Chinese are another bunch of suicidal idiots. Half of their loans are shark loans. They're building a policy to guarantee that they're eventually going to get nuked and destroyed, not just by us, but by the Japanese, who are, by the way, the third nuclear power is not Israel, it's Japan. They got a hell of a load of nuclear materials from the former Soviet Union. They have the best missiles on Earth for delivering satellites are Japanese, and they can easily be retooled in minutes to put a warhead on the top of them. They have their own imaging system from space. The Japanese are no slouches, and both the Russians and the Chinese know that the Japanese, especially and the South Koreans and the Taiwanese, are armed to the teeth with medium and short-range nuclear missiles. So, China's toast, and they're really arrogant and really stupid, and they're going to get themselves fried. And by the way, Russians think that because they've got these underground bunkers, they're going to survive. America has weapon systems literally centuries ahead of anybody else, including way more advanced than nuclear. And they're fools if they think they're going to survive a future war. By the way, neither will we, because I got a question last week from one of our listeners. Hey, it was a rhetorical question. Where are the local bunkers? And this guy was a former Delta Force guy, and of course being sarcastic when we were talking to him off air. And I said, look, that there's no Department of Defense here. There's a Department of Offense. There's no protection for the American public if there's an EMP or a nuclear war. There's nothing. I mean, yeah, it's ridiculous. That's right. There isn't. And anyway, I kind of wanted to say something. We get a lot of questions about the ice melting in Antarctic. Mm-hmm. And there's people that think that it isn't melting, and then there's people that
that actually go down and look at it. And I have, well, first I want to talk about the Arctic zone. I want you to look at the picture.
You're talking about the Arctic or the Antarctic? Because what's going on
there? Let's start with the Arctic. Let's start with the Arctic.
The Arctic is quite different than the Antarctic, isn't it?
Yes. And you'll see all that yellow and brown. That means that the ozone is building up. And it's building up over, well, this is kind of a hard map to read. It's building up over Russia and the North Magnetic Pole. So that's very interesting. It's the first time I've seen anything except blue and green on at the Arctic. And so I said the Arctic ozone hole is retreating, which is good news. That's what we need. We want the ozone layer to be there. And then I have a picture of the Antarctic zone, and you notice that in even Antarctica, we've got a buildup of the ozone layer, not directly over the pole, but close to the pole in the southern Pacific Ocean. Okay, NASA did a flyover, of Antarctica, because we get people that talk to us and they say, "Oh no, the Antarctic isn't melting." Well, they did an airborne survey. And I've got a bunch of pictures that'll be on my blog. And the mountains are starting to... You're actually able to see mountains with no snow on them. It used to be you just see ridges of snow, whether it be a mountain. Well, now you can see mountains with no snow on them. And they showed some of the calving that was occurring along the coast of Antarctica. And the calving occurs when, now Antarctica is a continent. There's no continent in the Arctic. In the North Pole, there's no continent.
Well, the closest thing we have is Baffin Island and some surrounding islands around it, which is pretty big because Baffin Island's half the size of Australia.
Okay. And, but anyway, in South Pole, the snow is sitting on ground, on mountains, on dirt. Right. And so what happens is that as it melts, it falls off into the ocean. Well, that ice in the Arctic, the ice was part of the ocean.
Right.
So you didn't get a big, tremendous rise in sea level from the melting of the Arctic ice cap. And we now have, they think in a couple of years we will have commodity traffic through the Arctic, through through the Arctic channel. Because so much ice is, yes, but we didn't get much of a sea rise. We got a little sea rise, but we didn't get a lot. But when the glaciers slide off of the land that is Antarctica, then all of that will be added to the sea rise.
Right.
Yeah, okay, there's nothing that's...
but by the way, all of these mountains you're talking about, like Mount Erebus, Mount Erebus is the largest volcanic mountain on Earth, and it spews out equivalent of more than 10,000 times the amount of so-called greenhouse gases like nitric oxide, which, by the way, CO2 is not really a good greenhouse gas. Nitric oxide and these other gases destroy the ozone layer. And most of these mountains in Antarctica are volcanic mountains. So the reason why is you go around them and see the steam vents all around them, they're melting the snow from below, not above. In other words, it's not getting a lot, that much colder or warmer that it's going to actually, melt because it's not there. It's because it's melting from below, because the volcanism underneath all of these volcanoes all over the planet, which is driving earthquakes too, is nascent oxygen and hydrogen released because of gravity waves striking our planet from deep space. So the melting, the global warming issue is not CO2. It's gravity waves causing nascent water and nascent oxygen and hydrogen actually increasing volcanism all over the planet, including this big earthquake that happened over Italy. So you're absolutely correct. The problem is that people aren't prepared for the rise in sea levels or an event that can happen every so many tens of thousands of years called a lithospheric slip, where the actual crust slides on the mantle. And that's coming.
Anyway, this should put to rest any doubts about the Antarctic ice melting. It is melting. Right. And we have proof of that.
But they have to know the mechanism. It's not because the ambient temperature is changing that much. It's because it's melting from below. Just like the methane hydrates, even off of Petaluma Marine Corps base here, or 12 miles from me, right on the coast. That methane hydrates is being released from there in the permafrost because of the changes of the actual planet. There's actual, at the bottom of the ocean floor, and at these places all over the planet, including the permafrost, it's being released because of the changes in the Earth. It's not because of, the ozone layer and the gases up in the upper atmosphere. There's something happening to the planet itself.
Well, if there is an ozone hole, you remember what happened in Greenland. It lets in if there's a hole in the ozone layer, it lets the UV
and the ultraviolet light, that's another factor, because ultraviolet light will actually crack ice and cause more release of water than even regular heat. So it's not the same thermal effect, but ultraviolet light penetrates deeper and cracks the ice, which will probably cause calving quicker than normal light, infrared light.
And that's what they're seeing in West Antarctica. Now, you have to understand, West Antarctica is the part of Antarctica that touches the Pacific Ocean. So that's the part where they're finding the calving. They're finding icebergs that are floating away from the continent of Antarctica. Yes.
Yeah. It's also very close to South America, too. There's not that big a difference in distance from the tip of South America and this kind of arm of Antarctica. Is it? How far is that separation? A few hundred miles? It's not that far, is it?
What is that called? That was Cortez. Wasn't that Cortez that went through there?
This is a particular channel through there, but it's not that far apart. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, moving on to the jet stream, and I could find only 113 miles per hour, and that was over the northeast Midwest, the northern Midwest of the United States.
Right, that's a little purple circle. When we do the video after the show today, that little purple circle shows you that the northern jet stream is very weak and very low velocity.
Very low. Now you will notice that at the equator, in the Pacific Ocean, just off the continents, is a big low pressure system that, it spans the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere. It's right at the equator. It's a huge low pressure system.
Right.
Other than that, there's a suggestion of a high pressure system. Remember, we're right now, for instance, the Midwest of the United States is under a high pressure system, and high will bring air down from the troposphere, and so what you have then is you have Chinook winds and things like that, and you don't have below where you're taking the gases and everything up into the top of the stratosphere. Instead, you're bringing that junk down.
Right.
And so over the Midwest, I would expect that you would see more gamma radiation. Okay, the significant wildfire potential outlook for November is the southeast. And we think the southeast had quite a bit of rain, but as it turns out, where they had the rain was mostly along the coast, and where it fell further inland up along the Appalachian Mountains, it ran down rivers. And so it didn't stay where the drought is, and the drought is significant. It goes from most of Virginia all the way down to the Gulf Coast.
Wow.
And yes, that's very... now I'm using this, the picture that I'm showing is the significant wildland fire potential, and you find that where there is a drought. Okay.
Yeah, so all these extreme crazy climate and stalled weather systems is leading to not only drought, but also to collapse of food supply.
Collapse of food supply, that's exactly right. And in fact, I was put in contact with a farmer out in Texas, and they're trying to get the habitat back to something of normal. In other words, they want the pine trees to grow, and they were burned down. Remember, they had severe fires in Texas, and then they had all that rain, and what grew was a holly tree. And so they're going in and taking out the holly trees, and then they're selling a tea that they make, a caffeinated tea that they make from those trees. But they're probably being paid to take them out because the government wants to return the land to native species. In other words, they want the pine trees in there, they want the shrub oaks, they want, all those things were gone. And that's one of the problems that we don't hear about when we talk about flood events, is that a lot of the plants just get washed away. They get uprooted, and pretty soon you've got bare land, and you don't want bare land where there's going to be windstorms. You want it covered with something, and so they're trying to restore it to a native habitat. Meanwhile, these invasive trees, these holly trees, have been growing just fine, but they're not.
There's a lot of invasive species like the pigweed down in the southern United States, through Georgia and other places. There's weird invasive species and also invasive organisms like these different mosquitoes, and the tropicalization of the lower southern states increases the chances of these viruses like chikungunya and filoviruses like the ZIKA becoming endemic.
Yes, and remember last week we said that Dr. Frieden of the Centers for Disease Control said that ZIKA would become endemic, and you just can't get rid of all the mosquitoes. It just is not going to happen.
Right.
Okay. We are having a meteor shower, and It's from the residue that was left by a comet, and it's called Taurid, and that's because it comes out of the constellation Taurus.
Taurus, yeah.
And on the 3rd of November, the Fireball Network reported 80 fireballs, which is not as many as we had earlier. About 4 months ago, we had over 200. Now, the reason that communication people like fireballs is that they ionize the atmosphere. And when you have an ionized atmosphere, then you can communicate across the continent.
Right, it allows you to bounce it off that ionic mirror, right?
Yes.
Amazing.
Well, we'll get into volcanoes.
Volcanoes next, and then a video after the show. With lots of nice. This kind of information is very unique, very important, and it's not going to be something that you're going to just pull up a magazine or open up your cable television or satellite, or even go on the blogosphere internet. Unless you go to TWILAND.INFO, and we also, of course, not only have the audio of the shows on Hour 2 on Friday, we do videos, and we do them usually the same day, sometimes the next day, but usually they're 3/4 an hour to an hour plus, and they cover all these things with pictures and other material. We're also going to be able to by next week, do a multi-broadcasting, like a professional broadcasting, which is my new, I have another chip coming besides my Elgato, the most advanced Elgato chip. I have the most advanced chip in the world from Blackmagic with the live stream studio software, and I can do up to 10 different sites anywhere in the world with multiple cameras, and up to 25 cameras on this site. So this is really cool. It means I'm going to be able to literally, multi-site around the world conferences. If you have an expert in one place, I can pull them if they're in Germany, whatever, and put them on screen, go back and forth, and you can speak, and we can have it live and also recorded, and we can edit them as well. So this is really powerful stuff, and we're getting amazing, what I call like a rocket launch, increased number of our hits. Our number of people just listening on YouTube alone has gone up by 400% in just 6 weeks. That's a lot.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah,
well, good for you. You're going to have a television studio pretty soon.
Next week. By the first part of next week. Yeah, literally I'll have it set up by Election Day.
Well, there's supposed to be a lot of activity the day before Election Day, and next Monday, and then again on Tuesday.
Maybe terrorism, in fact. That's one of the things that they talk about. There's a terrorist threat warning on Monday. What do you know about that? Anything specifically?
I don't know anything other than the news bites. They talk about it. They say that it's legitimate.
CBS in New York is saying that there is some specific threat that they think might happen. New York, Texas, and Virginia are all possible targets, they say. And, of course, it doesn't surprise me because the great distraction to try to do this now, of course, to be honest with you, terrorism would support the election of Trump, because this is something that Hillary Clinton is completely lost in space about, because she's not dealing with the fact that privately she says you can't vet these people, but publicly she's going to let in 550%, even more than the Abominator. So she's out of her cotton-picking mind. She doesn't give a damn if Americans die. She supports ISIS. The same money goes to ISIS and ISIL as supports her and her hubby, the serial rapist Bill Clinton. Amazing. So about an hour and 15, an hour 20 from now, we'll do your videos and have it posted up. And within a matter of minutes, you'll be able to see all these videos with nice pictures from the amazing research from Ann Morrison. Visit her website and donate. TWILAND.INFO, TWILAND.INFO. We'll be back in a moment with the firing line with Michelle. Answers to your health and wellness questions. Often some scriptures, a little bit of humor from you out there that have a great sense of humor. We'll be back in a moment with Michelle and Ann in about an hour and 20 minutes with a major video update. We'll see you then, Ann. Take care.
Bye.